Hi there, I am Wild Humphrey and they call me the Fact Master because I will tell you all the things you never knew you didn't know, and I'm back with a fact for today, and I'm faster than Google, and everything I tell you is from up here. Now if you consider all of the ruling dynasties of England and Great Britain, you might think of the Plantagenets or the Normans, the House of Tudor perhaps, or the House of Stuart. But then there's also the House of Hanover. And whilst the House of Hanover isn't quite as colourful as the others I've mentioned, it gave us 6 monarchs and it's played an important role in the growth of Great Britain. There were 5 kings. Amongst these kings was George III. Now he famously is the longest serving king ever the country's ever had. He reigned from 1760 until early 1820. During that time he fought not 1 but 2 wars against America. These became known as the Wars of Independence. The first one was from 1775 to 1783. The second, 1812 to 1815. Well, George lost both of these wars, which earned him the unwanted title of the last king of America. He hated that, but he couldn't do anything about it. He'd lost the war, he earned that title, and he was stuck with it. He was also known as Mad King George. As I say, he reigned for almost 60 years. Now, out of these 5 kings, he was the most famous. Now there were 4 Georges in the Hanover. 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th. And then there was a William IV. And William IV only lasted a few years. He's the oldest king to take to the throne. And within 6 years of putting the crown on, he was dead. He died on the 20th of June 1837, and the crown went to his niece, and her name was actually Alexandrina, and she'd been born on the 24th of May 1819. Now Alexandrina is better known to the world as Queen Victoria, but she didn't give herself that name until she became queen. And she realised that her mother didn't want her to change her name. And the rebel in her said, well, I'm changing it. She didn't like her name so much. So she said, I'm going to call myself Queen Victoria on 20th of June 1837. That's exactly what she did. Now, Victoria had always lived her life under her mother's wing. She never ever seemed to have had any freedom at all. She was 5 foot tall, you barely notice her. All of a sudden, at 17 years old, she was the queen. What she needed, protocol was against her, the pressure was on. She needed a husband. And her mother had a few ideas of who she should marry. All of them. Victoria said, no way am I marrying any of them. She had her eyes set, her sights set on a guy in Germany whose name was Albert. Albert Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, his full name. And she met him a couple of times. They were the same age, and the more she met him, the more she thought about him, the more she liked him. Eventually, in 1839, she invited him back to England, and on the 15th of October that year, Victoria proposed to Albert, because no one can propose to a queen. The Queen is far too important. Only the Queen can propose to someone. So she chose Albert, much to the annoyance of her mother. But these were star-crossed lovers. This was not a marriage of convenience. This was not just the Queen getting married to stop all the bother that would follow. No, she was in love with Albert. So much so she wrote letter after letter after letter about her love for this man. And they were married on the 10th of February 1840, and the country rejoiced. A year later, Victoria gave birth to a daughter, who she also named Victoria. And between them, they had a very happy life. Victoria, one thing she hadn't realised as Queen, although the population loved her, some people didn't. And it was only 2 months, or a few months after her wedding, on the 10th of June 1840, that an assassination attempt was made on her life. Thankfully, Victoria escaped unharmed, and the guy named Edward Oxford was arrested, charged, put on trial, charged with treason, but he was found not guilty on grounds of insanity. Victoria wasn't too pleased about this, but that's the way it goes. She had to be careful. It wouldn't be the first attempt on her life during her reign. So what she did, her and Albert, they set about starting a family. She had the daughter, but after the first baby, Victoria said, look, I don't like being pregnant. She made it clear she did not like being pregnant at all. The thought of it, she just couldn't, she detested. And she also thought that newborn babies were actually quite ugly. Nonetheless, despite all these words, her and Albert went on to have 9 children, 5 girls and 4 boys. The eldest of the boys was Edward, and he would become Edward VII. Now everything was going good in the marriage and in her reign, and becoming more and more popular was Victoria, but Albert was feeling a bit left out. He said he thought he was going to be a king, but he was a prince consort to the Queen. There you are, you're not a king. And he didn't really like this too much. He wanted something to do. So what did he do? He puts on a show for the world. And this took place in 1851. This show opened on the 1st of May that year in what became known as the Crystal Palace. At first, it wasn't called that, but a newspaper article someone had written said, this looks like a crystal palace, and the name stuck, and there we are. Albert's greatest moment during the marriage, although there were other great moments, because they had the 9 children, they had a great time, but it was fairly short-lived, because in 1861, just 10 years after the Crystal Palace, Albert was taken ill, seriously ill, and he died on December the 14th. Well, this devastated Victoria. She couldn't believe she'd lost her soulmate, her husband, the man she'd loved. What could she do? She couldn't do anything. From that day on, she wore black, never wore any other colour clothes. Victoria became the grandmother of Europe. She still carried on, of course, the role as Queen. And during her reign, the British Empire expanded like never before. She was also given the title of Empress of India in 1886. And of all the things Queen Victoria did for the country, one thing she did. In the year 1880, there's this little borough that she saw, and she named this borough the city of Liverpool. Now the borough was the borough of Liverpool since 1207, named by King John, but now in 1880 it became a city, and which is one of the reasons why there's so many statues of Queen Victoria around the city centre of Liverpool. She recognised this place was somewhere special, so that's what she did. Now Victoria reigned for 63 years, 7 months and 2 days, and when she died on the 22nd of January 1901, she was the longest serving monarch of the country ever. Obviously, Queen Elizabeth II has reigned longer than that now. Up to that point, Victoria was the longest of the lot of them. And this woman, who was 5 feet tall, stood head and shoulders above all of the kings. And that is a fact. And when she died, Edward finally got his chance to be king. But Queen Victoria, she changed the country beyond belief during her reign, and that is a fact. I am Wild Humphrey. I want to thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel because I'll be back with more all the things you never knew you didn't know, and that is a fact. In the meantime, take it easy, look after yourself. I'll see you soon.